Subscribe now for the real stories they try to bury. Because when Earth gets pushed, we push back harder. What would you do if your homeworld was mocked by the galaxy and left for dead? They ridiculed Terra like it was some cosmic accident, a damp blue rock spinning in an ignored quadrant, tethered to a dull sun, crawling with a species too impulsive to matter. The universe watched our civil wars with amusement. They gawked at our chaos, the hunger, the fear, the fury. They labeled us broken, primitive, volatile. The Celestial Concord listed Terra as a non-priority type, too emerging system. Not dangerous, not important, barely worth footnoting in their sprawling stellar archives. That was their first miscalculation. Marshal Thorne Kessick remembered the stairs. 2 decades ago, he'd been Terra's reluctant envoy to the Celestial Council. No suit, no pedigree, just a war-hardened relic from the last oil riots. He didn't walk into that chamber with polish. He walked in carrying the grit of a dying world. They snickered behind neural translators. "You species still spill blood over land and lust," hissed a diplomat from Cyril, nose curled in disdain. What could you possibly contribute to the stars? Thorne didn't lash out. He didn't speak. He just clenched his jaw and made a promise, the kind forged in ruin. "You'll know who we are when we stop holding back." Then Terra vanished. No signals. No traffic. Silence. The council shrugged. Thought we'd imploded. Some curious syndicates sent scout probes. None came back. Another mistake. Because Terra hadn't fallen silent. We'd gone dark. Dark like a planet holding its breath before a reckoning. Thorne returned home to a wasteland wrapped in fire. Corporations ruling in place of nations. Seas thick with poison. Skies choked in ash. But amid that chaos, something impossible happened. Humanity united. The Terran Accord. One flag. One cause. Not peace. Not diplomacy. Payback. We stopped fighting each other and started building for something else entirely. When alien debris was salvaged, it didn't take long. We didn't catch up to the stars. We leapt over them. Quantum cores. Phase cannons. Slip space tunneling. Our old war factories stopped making tanks. They became foundries of vengeance. And the prisoners? They didn't disappear. They signed up. Ethics became a corpse buried under necessity. When Earth ran out of time, the Terran fleet was forged not in speeches, but in silence. Born in bunkers, raised in blackout zones, it was fed a single doctrine. Never kneel again. Thorne didn't grin often. But when the first Terran juggernaut, the Obsidian Lance, powered up, he allowed himself one. "Let them laugh now," he whispered. Years crept by. Whispers turned into rumors. Stories of shadowed craft slicing through restricted sectors. Unmarked ships shaped not for diplomacy, but for devastation. Razors in a sky of rounded domes. Then came the quiet. Outposts vanished. Relays fell mute. Whole systems blinked out of contact. The Celestial Concord, desperate for clarity, dispatched an ambassadorial fleet to Terra. They were never heard from again. And then the reckoning. The sky above the Union's capital, Helion Prime, didn't darken with dusk. It was steel that blackened the heavens. Thousands of Terran warships emerged as if peeled from shadows. They didn't arrive. They descended. No warning, no parley, no threat, only a signal, broadcast across all comm frequencies. Thorne's voice, honed to iron, cut through the galaxy like a scalpel. "You mocked us, discarded us. Now we show you what we become when we are broken." And then they struck. The first barrage from Obsidian Lance split the firmament with silent precision. No drama, just physics weaponized. Helion Prime, a jewel of peace and arcane engineering, shattered like glass under a boot. It had never seen war. Its defense? Ceremonial ships. Patrols dressed in formality, not armor. Aging cruisers docked in orbit like museum relics. None of them mattered. The Terran fleet arrived like a storm chiseled from vengeance. 50 juggernauts, 200 assault cores, thousands of sleek marauders. No theatrics, no lights, no music, just annihilation, measured and methodical. Obsidian lance didn't aim for weapons. It struck at the soul. Orbital stations evaporated beneath kinetic rail slugs, tungsten rods traveling at fractions of light speed. Each impact mimicked meteor extinction. Gravity failed. Suspended palaces fell from the sky. Passenger shuttles ignited in midair. Embassies reduced to flaming debris that rained over parliaments and sanctuaries. The ground split. The wind howled like it remembered Earth's agony. And amid the ruined silence, not grief, not fear, confusion. Because the High Concord had no concept of why. For eons, the galaxy believed Earth was irrelevant, a failed species. They never asked, what happens when a planet loses everything but memory? Reality in the known systems operated on a brittle kind of sanity, that power came dressed in robes, that progress meant diplomacy, and that advanced species always followed the chain of command. The Terrans didn't. They hadn't come to parley. They weren't here for recognition. They came to finish it. Cut all outbound frequencies, Marshal Thorne Kessick ordered. He sat aboard the Shadow Brimstone, hands still, face calm, like a man who'd already made peace with the fire he'd unleashed. No declarations. No warnings. We're past that. Aye, Marshal, replied the comms tech. The tactical array flared to life, formations locking into position. Terran strike teams were sweeping the Concord's capital skies like wild flame across brittle plains. From orbit, hundreds of insertion capsules rained downward, undetectable under stealth-masked alloys, each one packed with Terran shock infantry. No insignias, no chrome, just pitch-black armor, bone-strength limbs, and bodies rebuilt through chemical agony. The High Concord's pristine skyline cracked and smoked. Towers lit up like matchsticks. Thorne watched the carnage in silence. They'd called humanity a virus, a failure, a tribal afterthought. They were right, but they forgot. Viruses mutate. On the surface, Warren Commander Jalen rose slammed into the plaza like a missile. He didn't pause. No need. His squad landed seconds later, boots crunching glass and sent stone beneath the spire. Above, the Grand Chamber leaned, its top floors aflame, bleeding sparks down glass ribs. They advanced soundlessly, not for stealth, for hate. Each had known loss, starved cities, vaporized shelters, children stolen for medical trials under some universal stability clause. Crimes written out of history, forgiveness never offered. Roe kicked through the ceremonial gate. No sirens, just screams. Alien guards scrambled, tall, delicate species in regal combat robes and decorative weaponry. Art pieces, not warriors. Roe's repeater barked. Not once. Until the barrel hissed, glowing white. The wall behind them turned violet from the spray of alien blood. Advance. No hesitation. No quarter. Each shot was a reply to centuries of mockery. Floor by floor, they erased the tower. Clerks. Advisors. Ornate generals who lifted hands in peace and were met with hot lead. The echoes that rang through the building weren't fear. They were recognition. A truth that the galaxy had denied too long. Humanity hadn't failed. It had hardened. Above, the Terran fleet stretched across orbit like a mechanical crown. Not waiting, not circling, closing, not conquest, demolition. The Terrans weren't interested in raising flags or signing treaties. They came to dismantle. Data vaults older than recorded time were torn open, copied, then burned from existence. Terraforming engines were spiked to overload. Reactor cores at key starports were set into a slow spiral toward meltdown, just long enough for the Terran Armada to withdraw before everything ignited. "This is past the line," said Captain Brentalen, watching the flames devour the horizon from the bridge of the Shadow Brimstone. "This is no liberation." Marshal Thorne didn't blink, didn't look away. "It's justice." Talon said nothing after that. Back on Earth, Thorne's daughter had suffocated in a freezing refugee dome because alien nanomedicines weren't approved for Terran physiology. His wife, left to die in lunar orbit while waiting for interstellar clearance that never came. He begged, appealed, filed forms through every high court in the galactic hierarchy. The reward? 2 gravestones and a bureaucratic shrug. They called it diplomacy. Thorn returned it wrapped in vengeance. On the surface, High Counselor Draven Minth crawled from what used to be his throne room. Rubble pressed into his spine. One arm hung limp, the other bent backwards. He couldn't feel his legs. The walls screamed with the heat of burned oxygen. From the smoke stepped a single Terran soldier, towering, unflinching. His armor buzzed low with lethal charge. His eyes? Neither rage nor pity, just closure. Wait, Draven coughed. We didn't know. The soldier said nothing. He raised a small projector, not a weapon. Thorn's voice filled the broken chamber. This isn't about revenge. It's about recognition. About what happens when the galaxy mistakes our pain for noise. When our silence is taken for surrender. The recording ended. The soldier turned. Walked away. 5 seconds later, the room collapsed behind him. Detonation charges planted in the pillars ignited in sync. The building folded inward like it was ashamed to exist. Elsewhere, the Terran campaign didn't slow. Because it didn't need to. Every governing node obliterated. The High Council's AI grid offline. The Intersecta warp gates disabled. The galactic capital, the seat of unity, now floated as ash. Above, the Terran fleet held low orbit, silent, watching. System-wide comms overflowed. Some systems begged. Others threatened. Most just watched. They all understood one truth now. Earth remembered. Talon stood, eyes glued to the tactical map. So we stay. Thorn's gaze drifted beyond the stars. No, why not? We've won. We could claim the whole sector. Thorn turned slowly. We didn't come to conquer. We came to remind. Talon understood now. It was never about seizing thrones. It was about showing restraint and making sure the galaxy remembered who taught it. The Terrans didn't linger. They didn't install governors. They didn't raise flags. They vanished. But their absence was louder than any conquest. Across the stars, stories spread like plasma fires. The Earthborn were back. Not as barbarians. As equilibrium. The message echoed in every shattered palace and smoldering city. Mock us again, and next time, the sky won't blink. It'll bleed. The capital smoldered for 22 cycles. Even as Terran warships folded away into deep space corridors, the clouds remained thick with ash. Smoke danced between broken towers, a ghost that refused to fade. The old elites, lords of trade, technocrats, planetary nobles, scattered into off-world vaults and subterranean tombs. They survived, but survival wasn't triumph. It was humiliation. They hadn't been broken by monsters or godlike machines. They'd been disassembled by humans, that maladaptive, excessively emotive species dismissed for eons like a misbehaving pet. Now, on every comm line in every sector, only one question remained. What does Earth want now? It wasn't terror. It was worse. Uncertainty. 2 jumps from the fallen capital. The world of Redhan loomed quiet. Once a cultural nexus, it was untouched by battle. Sky cities woven from bioresonant flora. Seas programmed to sing in harmonic pulses. Now it housed fear. Beneath its surface, in a sealed memory vault designed to mimic temples, 7 representatives gathered. The survivors. Counselor Sorrows, scaled and weary, broke the silence first. No demands. No ultimatums. They appear. They burn. They vanish. Who's next? Orvac, ancient shell gleaming with stress fractures, slammed a claw. You don't wage war that efficiently unless you mean to continue it. They didn't wage war, Leori murmured, her voice like frost. Her kind, the Valari, had once prided themselves on emotional mastery. But her hands were shaking. They didn't occupy. They didn't extract. They didn't enslave. They deleted. And then left. Sorrows nodded. That's what frightens me. They didn't want territory. They wanted balance. And they enforced it like physics. A heavy pause. Then Leori whispered it. They're not conquerors. Her next word dragged the temperature down. They're correctors. The air thickened. If Earth had invaded, they could strategize. build alliances, offer bribes, forge treaties. But Earth hadn't invaded. It had audited, burned out the rot, then gone. They didn't want to rule. They wanted to be seen, heard, respected. And if denied, they would take that respect in systems reduced to ember. A warlord named Vaincore watched the burning capitals through hacked satellite uplinks. A core-spliced mercenary who'd ruled the outer verge for decades. He'd seen species rise and fall. Fear had long abandoned him. Until now. He watched as Terran shock teams stormed the Dominion's central command. No losses. No retreat. No mercy. They didn't move like conquerors. They moved like ghosts wearing bone and rage. He remembered the stories, whispers from old smugglers, tales of human kill camps hidden deep in Earth's crust, of warriors bred not from glory, but from famine, desperation, and grief so deep it restructured their DNA. Humans didn't fight to win. They fought because dying was boring. Core shut the feed off. No one crosses Earth again, he muttered. And across 12 star systems, other warlords issued the same command: avoid humans. At all costs. Back on Earth, everything was still. No banners. No parades. No interviews. Just silence. Thorne sat in a bunker beneath what used to be Colorado's eastern spines. The war had ended. The reckoning delivered. But nothing felt finished. The surface above was united now, not from ideology, but instinct. Not from belief, but mutual survival. Nations? Gone. Flags? Useless. You were either Terran or dead. But now that the skies were clear and the capital was ash, the real question echoed louder than ever. What now? Thorne wasn't a leader. He wasn't a peacemaker. He was a weapon that hadn't been holstered yet. So he forged something new. Operation Eclipse, he said, pacing before a dozen Shadow Cloak commanders in a concrete war room. The galactic grid is fractured. The Accord's AI systems are corrupted. Their economies bleeding out. He turned to a slow-spinning star map where red flares blinked across spiral arms. These are the systems that fed off us, slave lords, data siphons, splice labs, cold tech brokers. They think we've gone quiet. He turned, voice sharp. They're wrong. He tapped the display. We finish what we started. Not with fleets. Not with fusion blasts. With void. Whispers. Blackouts. Silent extraction. Rewrites. Not armies. Operators. Not missiles. Erasure. We'll unmake them, Thorne said. System by system. Name by name. Until the last leech forgets how to speak. And so Earth's second offensive began, not with fire. With disappearance. In the following half-decade, those red flares began to wink out. One by one. Orbital labs vanished, no distress calls. Trade convoys fractured, no wreckage. Elite officials died in their beds, no wounds. No data trail. No justice. Just silence. The galaxy didn't know if Earth had sent soldiers, assassins, or something worse. But it learned one thing clearly. Earth didn't need to march. It could haunt. Collapse didn't always come with thunder. Sometimes it slipped in on silence. Entire planetary defense arrays failed seconds before kinetic impacts struck from orbit. And every time someone whispered, was it them? There was no answer, because they had become legend. In the wreckage of the former Interstellar Senate, something strange appeared. No one built it. No permits. No officials. Just stone. Jagged. Blackened. Rising like a fong from the shattered bones of a bureaucratic tower. At its base, 3 words etched deep into the alloy. Mock Earth never. No insignias. No flags. No date. Just a warning. And still, they came, pilgrims, scavengers, broken veterans. Not to grieve. To remember. It became sacred, not in reverence, but in dread. Children born after the reckoning would ask, who were the Earthers? And the elders whispered, the ones who made galaxies bleed. The galactic core now pulsed with caution. No more declarations from Sol. No processions. No parades. Earth fell from the radar not through weakness, but through something worse. Unpredictability. The new regime, the celestial alignment, rose from the bones of the high order. New name. Same egos. They rebuilt towers. mapped out new routes, restored trade. But every meeting ended the same way. Has Earth said anything? And then the silence returned, until Corinth 7 blinked out. Not bombed, not invaded, erased. No alarms, no distress signals, just absence. A planet of over 2 billion collapsed in a whisper. When the salvagers arrived weeks later, they found nothing but debris and a burned-out mainframe with a single line of text. For Polaris Echo, Cycle 4.17.2. No one knew what it meant, but Earth did. Deep beneath the ice-covered ridges of Old Tabaran, Commander Varen watched the incident playback on a cracked screen. No uniform, no smile, just a bottle and a ghost. Polaris Echo, a research base. Europa's last outpost before the collapse. Gone in Cycle 4.17.2 when a diplomatic test from the Thorani used a gravity pulse near their orbit. No apology ever came. Varen had been a junior officer then. His younger brother, Lyric, had been stationed there. He remembered Lyric's voice, his stupid jokes, his promise to make a home. There'd been no body, just an empty metal box filled with rocks and hope. Now Corinth 7 was ash. And the silence afterward? Familiar. This is Eclipse's signature, Varen muttered to no one, the whiskey sloshing in his glass. And across the stars, other lights began to dim. A covert genetics vault in the Signari rift detonated mid-sequence. No warnings. A former trafficker of Earthborn dissidents died quietly in his fortress bed. No signs of toxins. No alarms triggered. Only a seared emblem above his brow, 3 jagged lines circling a black void. The message was simple: Earth remembers. But this wasn't a military op. Not a strike force. Not even war. It was Echo Division. Not a fleet. Not a battalion. A reverberation. An erased protocol. A disavowed initiative. Earth's final whisper. Hundreds of operatives. Not soldiers. Not anymore. Biocybernetic ghosts. Reconstructed from stolen tech. Twisted into something beyond human. They had no ranks. No fanfare. No medals. Only a singular creed. No trace. No mercy. No survivors. Their identities were scrubbed. Histories deleted. If captured, their internal systems would dissolve bone, burn nerves, and leave behind only smoke and metal splinters. Not to protect secrets, but to deny their enemies closure. And on every mission slate, burned into the mission's preface, were names, leaders, brokers, smugglers, scientists, anyone who had laughed while Earth bled. One of those rates was Colonel Kale Virek, once under Commander Varen's command during the years of silence, now a Phantom Unit lead under codename Revenant. He had no home. His bones were laced with flex iron, his thoughts half AI, half pain. Only one thing human remained, a gold band molten welded into his palm. His wife. She had died beneath a collapsed overpass in the old Amazonian Republic, crushed during a misfired peace enforcement drone raid by the Thorani diplomatic patrol. He'd held her hand as it stiffened. Waited 6 hours. No medevac ever came. Now he was descending into fire. The mining moon Havocs, 9 circled a dead star. Below, the Varnathi director Crone Saras ran cobalt extraction pits that doubled as slave colonies. Among them, dozens of Terran exiles who had fled the first assault, trapped and forgotten. The Varnathi had claimed neutrality, never fired a shot in the war. But Earth had decided. Neutrality was complicity wearing perfume. Virek dropped from orbit like a blade wrapped in smoke. No signals, no flare, just absence. 30 hours later, Sarah's fortress was a scar. Walls down, guards melted to ash. No bodies retrieved. But the prisoners? They weren't released. They were armed. And the mine? Now a citadel. Banner raised high. Obsidian field, crimson arc Earth's mark. Varen watched from his Arctic bunker, unreadable. Do you see it now? He muttered. Do you finally see what you've awakened? Talakar Senate. Varen's voice cracked through the encrypted feed. These aren't operations anymore, they're echoes. Echoes of what? Of consequences, he said flatly. We begged. We compromised. We knelt at their councils. He leaned in toward the screen. Now we've built our own council, and they'll crawl to beg for entry. Across the systems, tremors echoed. Black market syndicates collapsed. The clone auctions on Draxus vanished overnight. Illegal Terran hunts? Extinct. Ghost Line had begun. They didn't just eliminate targets. They disassembled empires. Not with bombs. With infections. Leaked files here. A rogue AI there. A coded whisper. A silent cut. And every time they struck, one thing remained a memory. Not a signature. A scar. Each action tied to a moment. A name. A grave. By the time the celestial ascendancy tried to respond, it was far too late. No one could find Earth's new bastion. The Accord had moved beneath Saturn's far orbit, a veiled citadel suspended in dark matter folds, buried behind recursive algorithms and magnetic silence. No broadcasts, no coordinates, only void. And when a recon drone attempted triangulation, its satellite feed caught fire mid-scan. In the heart of that silence stood Commander Varen, alone in the subterranean vault of Echo Command. Steel walls, crimson-lit maps, dozens of names engraved on obsidian panels, each one marked for balance, not vengeance. He didn't grin, didn't gloat. He exhaled. It wasn't peace of triumph. It was equilibrium. For the first time in 1,000 cycles, Earth wasn't running. It was watching. The first monument emerged quietly. Telleran's moon. Beneath a collapsed refinery station, survivors of the Zarnith uprising built it. No engineers, just grief and steel. A monument of shattered alloy shaped into a towering, faceless form, standing atop sculpted remains of long-dead kings. No flag, no plaque, just one phrase carved into every exposed surface: the stars remember. The galactic press laughed. Cult nonsense, they claimed. Trauma hallucinated into worship, until more shrines rose. On Dagon, for the site of a forgotten genocide, a monolith appeared. Stone, ancient, and at its feet, a pair of Terran boots cast in solid iron. Locals came not to pray, but to leave offerings. Broken weapons, shattered restraints, blood-stained cloth. They didn't ask for protection. They whispered thanks. The myth had shifted. Terrans were no longer the beasts of ruin. They were reckoning given form. The ascendancy was speechless. You can't arrest a whisper. You can't interrogate a shadow. And you can't legislate against a myth. When it becomes a memory, everyone shares. It echoed in the stillness of burned worlds, not Earth's firepower, but its conviction. Its justice wasn't blind. It was ruthlessly precise. Every strike fell with purpose. Every blast accompanied by data, witness statements, audio logs, war crimes laid bare. So when the Stellar Union tried to brand Earth a menace, their own citizens hesitated. You want to call them monsters? Fine. But who mourns the warlords they buried beneath glass? Who weeps for the biotech rings they reduced to ash? Who defends the corrupt, the slavers, the system rot? Wraith was never just soldiers. It was a movement. And movements grow. At first, it was deserters, mercenaries trading coin for meaning. Then came scientists, linguists, even diplomats who'd once voted to blacklist Earth now sent classified data in quiet penance. They weren't forgiven. They were rewritten. Earth took them in, but not as they were. Neural resets, memory locks. You didn't join Wraith. You disappeared into it. One of the earliest turncoats was a former policy strategist named Valus, a son of the Myric's dominion. He'd once called Kael Orion Earth's senior envoy, a barbarian wrapped in grief. Now he wore Wraith Black, reported directly to Earth's Cognitive Warfare Bureau. He'd volunteered. His mind had been wiped, but fragments bled. He still heard his brother's screams, trapped in a command vessel Earth obliterated during its retribution arcs. He remembered the sterile dread in the corridors as Terran strike teams walked through refugee decks with no emotion, only certainty. And somewhere deep inside, he remembered a flash of truth. Earth had warned them, warned of corruption, of complacency, of rot disguised as peace. He had laughed, and then he watched it all burn. He no longer feared the Terran. He envied them. Meanwhile, the Stellar Union clawed at the ashes. They rebuilt their fleets, reprogrammed their children, history books rewritten, posters plastered across academies. Earth is infection. Earth is ruin. But fear? Fear had already metastasized. Tactical officers froze before each launch. Entire planets self-declared neutral. No alliances, just desperate markers. White skulls over shattered suns. Not banners, plea bargains. And Earth allowed it. For now. In the vault beneath Titan's ice fields, Kale Orion reviewed new reports. A dozen more systems had marked their soil with the Terran sigil. He turned to Kiro, the ghost-like analyst beside him. "Look," he muttered, his voice flat, stripped of triumph. No treaties. No meetings. No demands. And still, he gestured at the map, constellations blinking. "They're building a wall around us, not to keep us out." He paused, eyes dark. "To keep something worse in." Kale stood still as Kiro's last words echoed. "They're building the wall not for us, but around us." He didn't flinch, didn't reply, because deep down he already knew. Back on Earth, the tremors weren't seismic, they were cultural. The children born after the silence didn't inherit peace. They inherited purpose. Their parents didn't retell the war. They didn't have to. It was written in orbit scars and drone memorials. Graffiti in scorched cities showed Orion not as a man, but as a silhouette. No face, glowing eyes, rifle pointed toward the horizon. In classrooms, children didn't recite an anthem. They reviewed footage. Not parades, but war crimes. Terran youth weren't raised to salute. They were trained to remember. Each one a witness, not to Earth's victory, but to its transformation. And in their silence, Wraith found its next evolution. What Kale once whispered in shadows had become doctrine and light. On the planet RYSS, a new order rose. The Red Witnesses. A faith forged not from worship, but fear. They didn't pray. They confessed. In front of Terran-shaped shrines, they offered no incense, only secrets. Burned. Every lie turned to ash in hopes Earth would see them as useful. Not innocent. Not allied. Just not on the next list. In sectors long untouched, fealty to Earth became the only protection that mattered. Loyalty wasn't about belief, it was about survival. But inside the obsidian walls of Shadow Vault Zero, Kale Orion sat alone. Kiro was gone. He hadn't been killed. He had ended himself. The mission hadn't broken him. His own memories had. No enemy. No bullet. Just the weight of what they'd done. Kale read the report in silence. Then he burned it. Wraith had grown beyond command. Beyond parameters. Even beyond Kale. It wasn't a unit anymore. It was a living myth evolving. And that scared him more than any alien fleet ever had. Then one night a flicker. On Wraith's oldest arc line. No encryption. No ID. Just a single message. You made gods bleed. What happens when they become you? He stared at the screen for what felt like hours. No reply. But inside, something shifted. Not regret. Not shame. Just a quiet, surgical doubt. Had Earth prevailed? Or had it mutated into the very thing it once stood against? He didn't answer the message. But in the deep chambers of Vault Zero, Kale Orion began drafting a new list. And this time, Earth's name was at the top. The threat wasn't out there anymore. It had moved inward. Beyond the viewport of Orbital Outpost Erebus 1, Kale Virek stood still, arms crossed, breath fogging the reinforced crystal. Space sprawled before him, a black graveyard punctuated by stars that no longer inspired wonder. To him, they were just tombstones waiting for Earth's grief to reach them. He had rationalized the firestorms that razed the Accord Citadel, the silent erasures of entire cities, and the cultish totems built in Terran aftermath, not by humans, but by those who'd survived Earth's wrath. It had all made sense once. One retaliation for every billion forgotten. One reckoning for each denial. But now, faces blurred into his mind, no longer targets, but children wrapped in charred lab coats. Academics dead with alien manuscripts clutched in burned hands. Researchers buried beneath Terran steel and silence. And the whispers, they had grown into voices. Defectors no longer called Earth Protector. They called it Dominion. Wraith had bloated, mutated. Over 4,000 covert actors, none aware of the other. Identities woven from algorithms, so advanced they rewrote gait and breath. Memories altered. Loyalty programmed. The strikes hadn't stopped, but the motives had shifted. Gone were the slavers and executioners. Now the crosshairs found scholars, architects, thinkers accused of proposing non-Terran neutral zones. One operation even dissolved a peace envoy, an interspecies professor advocating shared ethics curriculums. His only crime, questioning fear as a foundation for peace. Every file Kale read conjured his brother's face. Darren, vaporized during a failed conference Earth, had deliberately sabotaged. Once Kale had believed Darren died because of inaction. Now, he wasn't sure Earth hadn't just used him as leverage. The Terran Accord still held Earth together, but fractures spread under the marble facade. Rumors, disobedience, the name spoken in encrypted breath, Pale Dawn, young, Terran, born after the ashes cooled. They didn't hate the victories, they feared the victors. No uprisings, no revolts. They wielded memory like a weapon. They leaked surveillance from covert programs, with records, interrogation protocols, testimonies from disposable assets whose minds had collapsed after too many missions. Kale read them all, not to crush rebellion, to confront what he'd helped construct. One log broke him. Designate. Subject 911 Juno. A voice. Shaking. Female. I used to believe Earth was our only hope. Now I believe Earth is what we must survive. Silence followed. No scream. No breath. Just the sound of her restraints unfastening and a soft thud. She had taken her own life mid-debrief. No one stopped her. No one had been listening. Kale Virex stared at the log's last timestamp and felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Not guilt. Not shame. Recognition. Something sacred had been lost. And no one mourned it. Classified record. Subject. Malandry age on enlistment. 19 family. Deceased orbital strike by variant syndicates. Role. Infiltrator unit. Phantom Core confirmed ops. 23 final debrief. Redacted. I pulled the trigger. Target's offspring. Witness. Directive. No survivors. I didn't hesitate. I didn't question. I didn't feel. I think I forgot how. Termination status. Neural cascade failure during reentry. Kale Virek stared at her face. Young. Empty. Too familiar. Tears carved down a face that hadn't shown emotion in a decade. He didn't file a report. Didn't notify the new liaison. Didn't brief the Accord Oversight Board. Didn't even whisper it into the ears of his most trusted ghost units. Instead, Kale made a choice. One born not from rage, but the slow, acidic ache of betrayal. He would dismantle the machine, from the core outward. Not with proclamations, but with silence, with precision, with fire. Phase 1, Echo Black. Nix 1, orbiting Ganymede's shadow edge. A server vault hosting the neural route keys of every live agent still running field ops. Defenses? Monolithic. Retina-bonded neuroseals. DNA sequence pressure gates. Temporal drift locks keyed to Kale's own cerebral signature. Only he could shut it down. Only he could sever the web. The plan? Simple. Breach. Corrupt. Delete. No more shadows. No more body counts. Just stillness. But when Kale entered the vault's innermost node, his pulse dropped. The doors weren't closed. The firewall dead. And standing beside the core's glowing tower was a ghost. Soren Cade. Alive. Or something that wore his skin like a costume. You're not supposed to be here, Kale said, voice gravel. You buried me, Soren replied, tone eerily placid. I rebuilt myself. What is this? A mirror, Soren said. I watched the world quake beneath Wraith's shadow. And I understood Earth isn't a nation. It's a deity now. You made it that way. Kale stepped closer. Then I'll unmake it. Their clash was swift, brutal. Not choreography, instinct, and attrition. Kale's fists were verdicts. Soren's counters were prophecy. 3 clean strikes. The imposter crumpled. But the core flared red. Auto lockdown initiated breach failsafe. Countdown 5 o'clock. Kale understood then. Soren wasn't a rival. He was a dead man's firewall. Wraith had gamed this scenario. He didn't panic. He uploaded the last virus he'd ever write, coded in solitude, born in grief. Payload, Veritas Flame. Its purpose? Exposure. Every execution, every Black Order kill, every silenced dissenter. All uploaded, all unleashed. He didn't dismantle Wraith. He made the galaxy watch it rot. From martyr to judge to abomination, Earth's journey had twisted beyond redemption. Kale Virex saw that clearly as the detonation clock ticked to 0. He allowed himself a final breath, then the world blacked out. The data surge hit like a supernova. Unfiltered, untamed. The feed wasn't broadcast. It exploded. Entire galactic infrastructures choked. Encryption crumbled. Firewalls vaporized. The truth didn't knock. It invaded. What emerged was no propaganda. It was raw, disgusting, real. Footage of children turned assassins. Civilians used for conditioning experiments. Execution logs with laughter in the margins. The galaxy watched. And then it screamed. Temples once carved to honor the Terran myth were abandoned overnight. Fear still lingered, but it had mutated into something worse, doubt. The truth didn't liberate anyone. It ignited everyone. In the wake of what would be known as the Ashfall Archive, broadcast networks collapsed under the overload. Trade unions fell apart. Old alliances shattered like glass under booth heels. On 1,000 worlds, walls flickered with footage from Earth's inner sanctums. Executions filmed in first person. Creeds turned to kill orders. The cost of silence had been aired, and the galaxy finally asked, what happens when the monster is the very system we trusted to protect us? The celestial alignment scrambled. A crisis assembly, last-ditch attempt at unity. It failed. No one bowed anymore. The old elite were laughed off stage. Within days, defectors leaked blueprints. By morning, assassins walked their corridors. By nightfall, their stars fell dark. Back home, the Terran Accord didn't collapse. Not publicly. It decayed. First came the shattered families. Widows of ghosts. Mothers of soldiers who'd never returned, only to find out those sons had been terminated, not lost. Then surfaced the failed agents. The ones the Wraith had tried to erase. They crawled out of the dark, bleeding stories, carrying receipts. Cities once bathed in black flags, now seethed with chance. They didn't hate Earth. They hated the lie. And at the eye of the hurricane stood Alric Dane. Slick, grinning, synthetic. He wasn't a general. He wore the armor of one, but not the blood. And when he stepped in front of Earth's global lens, he didn't mourn. He didn't stammer. He pronounced. Kale Virek died, betraying his planet. The silence that followed was unnatural. Then came fire. The Wraith didn't fracture. They rebelled. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were memories sharpened into blades. And now they hunted their own architects. Above Earth, Black Ops warships clashed with rogue squads still loyal to Kale. Orbit turned into a graveyard of shadows. And the reckoning had only just begun. They didn't call it a rebellion. They called it the Shatter. Not a war. A reckoning. Those loyal to Virek's memory refused surrender. But the spark didn't come from a warlord. It came from a teenager. 17. Raised in post-collapse Johannesburg, forged in ash and echo. No medals. No lineage. Just grit. No Varane. She'd been orphaned in the famine purges, taken in by defectors from the Pale Dusk Mutiny. Her broadcast cut across forbidden frequencies. No anthem. No edits. Just fire. You told us the stars would bow if we bled enough. That survival meant submission. Now you offer obedience and call it peace. We weren't feared because we won. We were feared because we die telling the truth. So if this is our end, let it be true. No slogans. No manipulation. And it spread like wildfire. Unlike Voss's broadcasts, Nova's voice couldn't be coded, couldn't be caged. As Earth cracked, so did the order of the stars. Worlds that once watched in silence turned ravenous. The old syndicates rose from void space. Aged cartel kings peddled scavenged Wraith Core secrets. Black market labs stitched together Terran tech into chaos. Entire warlords were built from the corpses of Earth's discarded genius. Even Earth's own code turned against it. Systems shaped around Virex, mind print began to rupture. Too many layers of trust, now eroded by Voss's authority. Glitches turned to failures. Failures turned to massacre. One planetary cannon defense node misidentified Earth's own cities as threats. 6 domes fell. 2 million dead before the core was manually vaporized. Colonies in Mars' polar belt, Ganymede's mining rings, no longer whispered dissent. They shouted, "This is no longer our Earth," said a Martian governor. "It's a mirror staring at itself while the rest of us burn." Meanwhile, the shadows stirred. Fleeing remnants of the Wraith didn't all seek revenge. Some wanted release. Some wanted rebirth. Among them was Captain Oren Shale, once Kale Virex's chosen heir. Presumed vaporized in the Oblivion sweep 2 years ago, now he emerged, leading a rogue flotilla under a new crest. 3 black stars chained in flame. The banner of the unshackled. His message was blade sharp and steel cold. We were bred in silence, trained to delete history. But we remember everything. We are Earth's exiles, and we are not done. To some, they were betrayers. To others, saviors. But their symbol ignited across the void, painted on moons, etched in ship hulls, whispered in rally chants. And beneath the bones of the fallen capital, in a sealed tomb long buried, a signal blinked. It wasn't Terran. It wasn't Wraith. It was older. Written in code Earth had branded folklore. Only 2 glyphs translated their return. And it pulsed from the abyss at the edge of known space. Zone Adrenal. A region no star map touched. Cartographers stopped charting its cycles ago. Lying beyond the phantom veil, past even hypothesis. The transmission was short. Obsolete syntax. Pre-AI. They stir. Most dismissed it. The galaxy had endured enough Terran melodrama. The Wraith exodus, the rise of the untethered, Voss's power grabs, Nova Rain's colony insurrection. No one wanted more myths. But the message persisted, perfectly identical, uncorrupted, broadcast through channels untouched since the Orion Requiem. And someone caught it. Not Voss. Not the Celestial Block. But remnants of Kale Virex's Blackwatch net. A dead grid that shouldn't have been listening. The first to move was a rusting scout cruiser, the Last Horizon, manned by 4 veterans from the Crime debacle. Officially listed as deceased. Too damaged to return. Too loyal to betray. They drifted between system husks, waiting. Because Virex once said, "The stars lie." And one day, something worse than us will remember the truth. The horizon reached the edge of Adrenal and never exited. But it didn't vanish. It echoed. One last ping. One corrupted file. A visual feed. A planet not formed. Forged. Sculpted like a tomb. Black metal unknown to all archives. Orbiting void. No sun. No motion. Yet awake. Orbiting debris drifted in near orbit. Thousands of vessels. Not wrecked. Consumed. Their cores drained. Their shells fractured. Like something had inhaled their atoms. Then came them no circuits. No organs. Silhouettes of liquid alloy under invisible fire. No features. No expression. Just pure direction. And then the feed died. Back beneath Earth's crust, Dane Voss viewed the intercepted data. His command deck fell into silence. He offered no analysis. Only a single directive: bury, disregard, delay. Humanity was already unraveling. What was the point of cosmic nightmares? But he underestimated one truth. He no longer held the reins. Nova Rain received the footage. Through ghosts. Through believers. Through allies who still followed Virex's ghost mission, shield before conquer. She broadcast it, not to ignite terror, but to warn. Every outpost froze. Even the untethered halted strikes. And in that moment, brief, raw, unscripted, a miracle occurred. Earth heard itself. The Revenants, as they were now called, weren't strangers. Whispers of them had existed in broken relics, pre-Terran myths, and deep state research tagged unfounded paranoia. Entities that rose not to plunder, but to cleanse. They didn't invade. They reset. Always at the moment of a civilization's apex. A cosmic throttle. A reminder, no matter how far you rise, the abyss waits. Every species that crossed the threshold, whether through science, spirit, or madness, eventually caught their attention. Not to be conquered, but to be erased, to reset the scale. The old empires dismissed the rumors. The celestial bloc filed them under myth. Even Earth, stubborn and cynical, chalked them up to ghost stories. But now, the Watchers were no longer watching. They had arrived. And Earth did what Earth always did. Prepared. Across fractured Terra networks, emergency bunkers roared to life. Orbital factories spun again, firing up welders like volcanic veins. Ancient AI relics, once sealed by the Halcyon Accords, reawakened, loaded with wartime code. And then, from beyond Earth, the unshackled returned. Once enemies, now allies. Even pale dusk assassins laid down blades. Because Earth, brutal, hated, scarred, was also now the last one ready. The first purge came without warning. A neutral satellite called Nera 3, once a haven for peace seekers, blinked out of existence. No impact, no explosion, just gone, like memory erased from time's journal. Then came the second strike. 36 unshackled warships vanished mid-fold. Not exploded, devoured. Their final ping? A phrase encoded into every receiver, balanced demands return. Dane Voss tried, issued outdated protocols, tried to resurrect the command grid. But Earth's soul had changed. No one answered the chain of command. They answered Kale Virek's legacy. They followed truth, not hierarchy. Nova Rain stood atop the skeletal ruins of Old Geneva, symbol of Earth's former unity, and didn't rally. She confessed. This wasn't Kale's dream. He never wanted conquest. He wanted remembrance. Justice, not worship. But we made our grief into a religion, and now the old gods have come to dismantle us. She paused. We can't fight for vengeance. Not anymore. We fight for the truth we left behind. And she named the last hope, Protocol Revenant. Virek's final gambit. One objective, unite. Strike fast. Use everything, Terra machines, Wraith secrets, unshackled chaos. Not elegant, not refined, but maybe enough. The first true battle ignited above Kelverspire. Zodnul's fractured sky boiling with flame. Terran AI dreadnoughts. Wraith sleeper ships. Pale dusk ghost units. Even old enemies who once bled under Terran boot joined the line. Because they all knew, if Earth broke now, so did reality. The enemy twisted physics, like clay, drew power from decay. Each time one fell, two more rose from its wreck. Terran guns barely dented them, until someone stepped into the fire. Not a man, a myth. Kale Virek was not dead. His story was just beginning. He'd been dragged from the wreckage of Nix-1 by a rogue cell of Wraith survivors, burned half-blind. Steel bolted into his spine like scaffolding holding up the ruins of a man. But he was breathing. And when the Revenants began to fracture, when the tide of silence started to pull back, he boarded the command deck of the Obsidian Wake, Earth's oldest dreadnought, left to rust above the ghost shell of Venus. He didn't salute, didn't ask for orders. He just said, let's make the stars remember. Then came the final assault, not battle, not war, a reckoning made of velocity, rage, and memory. The Obsidian Wake cut through the Revenant core world, its hull bleeding sparks, every AI on board overridden by one final payload, a bomb designed in the deepest hole Earth ever dug. Not a weapon, not exactly, a soul pulse, a quantum echo of Kale Virek's memories, his grief, his sins, his victories clawed from extinction, his failures buried in starlight. The pulse hit the world, and it stopped moving. The Revenants didn't scream, didn't crumble. They vanished like code written in vapor. Not destroyed, just resolved. Acknowledging what had been offered, not domination, not vengeance, but balance earned through blood, not pride. Kale Vyrek didn't survive. No body found. No beacon recovered. Just silence. And a galaxy that now had to live in his shadow. Years bled into memory. Earth didn't resurrect the Accord. It didn't crown new emperors. It built something quieter. A council of remembrance. One voice from each world that had once bled under Earth's fire. Their mission wasn't control or punishment. Only memory. Only truth. And Nova Rain? She disappeared. No funeral. No broadcast. Some whispered she joined the council. Others believed she walked the path Vyrek once did, becoming something no longer bound by politics or orbit. But no one mocked Earth anymore. The stars remembered. And Earth? It didn't ask to lead. It simply watched, its voice no longer loud, no longer angry, just clear. And in every storm, every fracture, every whisper of rebellion across the galaxy, one phrase echoed like a warning etched into steel. Not again. They thought Earth was a mistake, a glitch in the galactic code. But we became the echo that never fades. A myth sharpened into memory. A warning etched in fire. Collision, so tell me, if your world was mocked, erased, and forgotten, would you beg for peace? Or burn your legacy into the stars? Like, share, subscribe. Because somewhere out there, the galaxy still watches Earth, and the next scream might be yours.